They say a bride is the most beautiful thing in the world on her wedding day. But today, I'm the most beautiful death row inmate in New York. I'm standing in the middle of my own altar, my $1,000,000 gown soaked in blood and dirty water. I'm staring directly into Julian's gun, and I'm smiling. I'm not afraid of death. In fact, I walked in here waiting for it. I sacrificed my honor, my future, and my life just for 15 minutes of the most public humiliation for this murderer. But there was one variable I never factored in. The silent bodyguard who stood behind me for 10 years, the man who was supposed to pull the trigger on me, is now using his own body as a shield against the hail of bullets. 15 minutes ago, in the bridal suite, I sat there, clutching the private investigator's report that had just been slipped under my door. Mark, the only man I ever loved, hadn't died in an accident. Julian pushed him off that cliff. And my father, my respectable father, was the one who swept the blood away to clear the path for this merger. A cold, dark fury burned through my veins, incinerating every ounce of fear. I didn't run. I wiped my tears, lowered my veil, and whispered to my reflection, "If I'm going to hell, I'm dragging Julian and my father down with me." I walked down that aisle like it was the gallows. Julian stood there, radiant and triumphant. He took my hand to place the ring. I felt a wave of nausea hit me. I leaned in close to his ear and whispered with the voice of a demon. "Mark told me, you whimpered like a dog that night while you watched his car burn." Julian's face drained of color, turning from a smug pink to a deathly pale, then a purple rage. I held my phone high, hit send, and watched as the murder report flashed across the ceremony's giant screens and every major news outlet. I didn't scream. I just spoke loud enough to silence the room. I do not, because I don't marry murderers. Julian lost his mind. His arrogance was shattered in front of New York's elite. He lunged, pulling a gold-plated pistol from his tuxedo and pressing it hard against my forehead. "You think you'll live to see me arrested? I'll send you to join your pathetic lover right now." I closed my eyes and smiled. I was ready to go to Mark. But death didn't come. Instead, I heard Julian scream. Kaelen, my silent shadow, had moved. With lightning speed, he snapped Julian's wrist, sending the gun flying. He wasn't just protecting me. He was neutralizing the guards before they could even draw. Kaelen grabbed my shoulder, spinning me toward him. For the first time in 10 years, he spoke a deep, commanding voice that jolted me out of my death trance. "Princess, you don't have permission to die yet. The game has only just begun." The Jeep tore through the New York night like a hunted beast. I sat in the passenger seat, my fingers still white-knuckled around a mangled wedding bouquet. My $1,000,000 gown felt like lead, soaked in a sickening mixture of rainwater and blood. I looked over at Kaelen. In the flicker of passing streetlights, his face was terrifyingly cold. 10 years. For 10 years, I thought I knew this man. I thought his silence was a quiet shield. But the kiss of death he just gave Julian at the altar has shattered my innocence like a splash of ice water. My voice shook, splintering against the wind whistling through the door frame. "Kaelen, who are you? How can you speak? Why did you betray my father?" He didn't look at me. His veined hands gripped the steering wheel, weaving through narrow alleys at a lethal speed. "Shut up, Elara," he replied. His voice was a deep, gravelly rasp, carrying a threat I'd never heard before. "If you want to live to see the sunrise, stop asking questions and throw that phone out the window, now." I froze. Throw it away? It was my only tether to the world, the only thing holding the investigator's report. But looking into Kaelen's eyes through the rearview mirror, I knew he wasn't joking. I lowered the window. A freezing gust lunged into the cabin, threatening to tear my fragile veil to shreds. I let go. The phone vanished into the pitch-black night. In that heartbeat, I realized Elara Vane of the past was officially dead. We stopped in front of a decaying cellar beneath an abandoned shipyard. Kaelen climbed out, threw open my door, and hauled me out. I stumbled into the mud. The pristine white lace of my dress instantly stained a filthy, rotting gray. He didn't help me up. He just stood there towering, grim like a phantom of death. "Get inside," he commanded. I limped after him into the dark basement, the air thick with the stench of rust and engine oil. Kaelen flicked on a dim yellowish bulb hanging from the ceiling. The weak light caught the wound on his arm, the price of the shootout at the altar. Without a single groan, he pulled out a dagger, heated it over a lighter flame, and sliced through his suit jacket. I stood paralyzed, watching him perform his own first aid. You're hurt," I whispered. Kaelen looked up at me, his gaze a haunting mix of contempt and pity. "This is the price of freedom, princess. You think escaping Julian is the end? He's not just a jilted groom. He's a technological monster. Right now, his AI system is scouring every corner of this city to find you." Kaelen reached over and turned on an old radio on the table. An emergency broadcast blared out. Special warrant issued for Elara Vane. Subject accused of the attempted assassination of her fiancé and theft of national secrets. A $10 million reward for any information. My own face flashed in my mind, no longer a bride, but the most dangerous fugitive in New York. I collapsed onto the cold concrete floor, burying my head in my hands. Everything was moving too fast. My father, Julian, and even Kaelen, everyone had their own plan for me. "Why?" I screamed in agony. Why would my father do this? What did Mark do wrong? Kaelen stopped bandaging his wound. He stepped closer and lifted my chin with his calloused hand. "Your father doesn't need a daughter, Elara. He needs a sacrificial lamb to hide his rotting empire. And Mark, he simply saw something no one was ever meant to see. He tossed me a set of filthy workers' clothes and a pair of shears. Cut that hair. Get out of that dress. If you want to keep that pathetic little life of yours long enough to get revenge, start learning how to disappear." I held the shears, watching the long locks I had pampered for years fall to the filthy floor. Every snip felt like a cut into my own fragile heart. I looked at the pile of torn white lace at my feet, the tombstone of a lie. I pulled on the coarse, oversized clothes, feeling the rough, cheap fabric against my skin. When I looked up, Kaelen was watching me with a flicker of faint respect. "Good," he said curtly. "Now, we need money, but Julian has frozen your accounts. He's waiting for you to touch an ATM so he can pin your location. We're going to play his game, but we're doing it on my stage." He led me to an underground black market, buried deep beneath the city, where the most bloodthirsty gamblers in New York gathered. The air was a suffocating fog of tobacco, sweat, and desperation. Kaelen pushed me toward a massive poker table, where a local kingpin with tattoos snaking up his neck ruled the game. "You said you understood probability," Kaelen whispered into my ear, his hot breath making me shiver. "Prove it. Win me enough money to get out of this city, or we both get served to Julian on a silver platter tonight." I looked at the deck on the table, then at the predatory eyes boring into me. My heart hammered against my ribs like it wanted to escape. This wasn't my father's luxury casino. This was a place where losers lost their lives. I took a deep breath, feeling Kaelen's cold presence right behind me, like a guardian wraith. I picked up the first card. The game of life and death had officially begun. I sat down on a shaky wooden chair. Across from me was Big Joe, a giant of a man with bloodshot eyes and a thick, bushy beard. He looked at my grime-streaked worker's clothes, then at Kaelen, who stood with arms crossed in the shadows behind me. He laughed a dry, raspy sound like gravel grinding together. "A sewer rat wants to play poker with a lion?" He mocked, tossing a $500 chip into the air and catching it deftly. "The rules here are simple, little girl. No limit. You win, you take the cash. You lose. You leave a finger." I felt my palms slick with sweat. I looked down at my hands that once knew only crystal wine glasses and piano keys, now trembling on a table stained with wine and grease. Kaelen placed a hand lightly on my shoulder. His touch was cold, but it felt like an electric current jolting me awake. He didn't say a word, but I understood the pressure of that hand. "Don't let the fear drown your brain," the hand began. I was dealt my 2 whole cards, a king of hearts and a 9 of clubs. Not terrible, but far from a perfect start. I glanced at Big Joe. He was chewing on a half-smoked cigar, his eyes brimming with arrogant confidence. He tossed a thick stack of cash into the pot. In my head, the numbers began to fly. I didn't look at the cards. I looked at Julian. No, I looked at the shadow of Julian through Big Joe. Men in power always have the same habit. They think they can crush an opponent through sheer aggression. I started counting. 12 players in the room. 2 decks mixed. Probability of the next ace, 8.5%. But more importantly, the pulse in Big Joe's neck was quickening every time he touched his pile of chips. He was bluffing. He didn't have a hand. He just wanted to chase me out early because he despised playing a girl. I pushed the entire stack of cash Kaelen had given me into the middle. "Call," I said. My voice was dry, but strangely steady. The crowd around us hissed and whispered. Kaelen remained as still as a shadow, but I knew he was tracking every micro-movement in the room to ensure no one pulled a gun to cheat. The flop. 10 of hearts, queen of hearts, 7 of hearts. I had 4 hearts. One more, and I'd have a flush. Big Joe slammed the table, shoving another pile of cash in. "All in, little girl? Or do you want to leave your pinky and vanish?" I looked him dead in the eye. In that moment, I didn't see Big Joe. I saw Julian's triumphant face at the altar. I saw my father's contempt. Rage surged, incinerating my fear. I unstrapped the cheap watch Kaelen had given me and tossed it into the pile of money. Everything. Flip the cards. The river was the 2 of hearts. I had the flush. Big Joe froze. He flipped his hand a pair of 10s. He'd lost. He roared, lunging forward to grab my collar, but Kaelen was faster. In the blink of an eye, his cold gun barrel was pressed hard against Big Joe's temple. "The money. And the keys?" Kaelen said. His voice wasn't loud, but it turned the seller to ice. Big Joe grit his teeth, pushing the money and a set of old truck keys toward me. We walked out into the relentless rain, carrying $50,000 in blood money and a way to disappear. We fled toward the state line in that rattling truck. Kaelen handed me a battered laptop with a makeshift antenna. "Your father is starting his performance," he said, his eyes never leaving the pitch-black road ahead. I opened the screen. A live stream appeared. My father was lying in a hospital bed, hooked up to tubes, his breath shallow. He looked into the camera, tears streaming down his aged wrinkles. "Elara, my poor daughter. Julian told me everything. He is willing to forgive, and I am ready to protect you. Come home, my child, before this cancer takes me away." My heart constricted. A part of me, the girl he used to carry in his arms, wanted to believe. I wanted to believe he was being deceived, that he truly loved me. I reached out to hit the button to send our location. "Don't," Kaelen growled. "Look at the corner of the screen, princess. The reflection in the glass of the medicine cabinet behind him." I zoomed in. Reflected in the glass was the scene behind the camera. My father wasn't alone. Julian was standing there, wine glass in hand. The 2 of them were clinking glasses and laughing the moment the camera panned away. On the bedside table, there was no medicine, only a stack of asset transfer documents already prepared in my name. They didn't want me back out of love. They wanted me back to sign my own financial death warrant, to legitimize all their crimes. I felt my chest tighten as if gripped by an icy hand. This betrayal hurt worse than any physical wound Julian could inflict. I looked at Kaelen. He still wore that expressionless mask. "What do you want to do now?" he asked. I snapped the laptop shut. My gaze turned toward the night ahead, now as sharp and cold as a blade. "They want a drama? I'll give them a horror movie. Kaelen, I want into the Vane Group's internal network. Now. If they want to use their reputation to kill me, I'll use the truth to incinerate their throne." Kaelen's lip curled slightly, a rare, dangerous smile of approval. "Welcome to the world of predators, Elara." I was no longer the fragile debutante in a pristine white wedding dress. Under Kaelen's guidance, I navigated the security layers of the Vane Group, a place I once called home, but which was in reality a labyrinth of financial atrocities. My fingers flew across the keys. It felt like I was touching the pulse of the monster that had swallowed Mark whole. "Careful," Kaelen muttered, his voice dropping as a red alert flashed on the screen. "Julian has activated the Argus firewall. If you touch that file, he'll have our coordinates in 30 seconds. I paused, my breath hitching. He used my mother's birthday as the second layer password. He thought he understood this family, but he forgot that I was the only one who spent my childhood watching my father hide his secrets. I entered a different string of characters the date my mother died. The firewall crumbled. A mountain of data unfolded before me. Bribes for New York officials, ghost shipments at the docks, and most gut-wrenching of all, the recording of Mark's final call before he was forced off the cliff. His voice crackled through the speakers, trembling but righteous. "Julian, you won't get away with this. I've already sent the report to Elara." Tears blurred my vision, but I wiped them away instantly. Now was not the time for grief. I told Kaelen I had everything and wanted to leak it immediately, but he caught my hand, stopping me. He told me that if we sent it now, they'd use their media influence to smother it in minutes. We needed a bigger stage, a place where they couldn't hide. We moved to the abandoned harbor, planning to use the satellite broadcast system, but Julian was faster. He was done playing psychological games. He wanted blood. Headlights from dozens of armored vehicles suddenly blazed to life, trapping us in a circle of death. Julian stepped out from the shadows, his broken arm braced in a shimmering metal splint. He held a remote device, a twisted smile carved into his face. He bellowed through a megaphone that I'd never beat Argus, that he'd pinned me the moment I touched my mother's file. He said he gave me the chance to return as a submissive doll, but I had chosen to die like my pathetic lover. A sniper shot rang out, the bullet grazing the steel container inches from my head. Kaelen tackled me to the ground. I saw blood blooming through his shoulder. He'd been hit. I screamed in panic, but Kaelen didn't answer. He looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, no longer protective, but a gaze of cold, absolute calculation. To my horror, he reached into his own bleeding wound, his face unmoving as he pulled out a tiny, blood-stained object. It was a micro-tracking chip, embedded deep beneath the skin. He pulled an encrypted radio from his belt, hit the button, and his voice boomed with authority. Alpha 402 reporting. Targets Julian Vane and the father are in the kill zone. Data copy complete. Activate full arrest warrant. Police helicopters flicked on high-intensity searchlights simultaneously, turning the harbor into day. The Special Task Force megaphones ordered everyone to drop their weapons. Julian froze, his henchmen lowering their guns in confusion. I looked at Kaelen, hoping he'd take my hand and tell me it was over, but he didn't. Kaelen stood up, pulling a federal agent badge from his pocket. He looked at me with the eyes of a hunter who had just finished a 10-year chase. There was no warmth left. He declared coldly, "Elara Vane, you are under arrest for complicity, harboring criminals, and participating in the illegal financial transactions of the Vane Group over the last 5 years. Everything from this moment back has been recorded as evidence of your knowledge of these operations." The metal cuffs snapped shut around my wrists. The sea wind howled, drowning out my choked sobs. Julian's betrayal was a knife. My father's was ice water. But Kaelen's betrayal felt like he had reached in and hollowed out my soul. He didn't save me. He was just cultivating evidence. For 10 years, he stood by my side not to protect me, but to wait for the day I grew up, until I was dirty enough to take down the entire empire along with myself. I whispered, asking him if there was ever a single second he saw me as a human being. Kaelen was silent for a heartbeat, then turned away, leaving me with a sentence colder than the grave. "Princess, in this game, no one is innocent." The handcuffs were cold and cruel. I watched Kaelen walk away, leaving me to the agents, but he had only taken a few steps when a mocking round of applause echoed from behind the armored cars. Julian stepped forward, his face distorted by a sickeningly smug grin. Walking beside him was the man I had called father for 24 years. He didn't look like a man under arrest. He smiled, nodding appreciatively at Kaelen. "Well done, agent. Finally, the stubborn little brat is in the cage." I froze, looking from Kaelen to the two monsters. Julian leaned in, using his cold gun barrel to lift my chin. "Why do you think I was patient with you for 2 years, love? I needed your name on a marriage certificate, so this entire empire would legally belong to me. Your mother left a twisted will. You are the sole heir once you turn 24. If you die before taking over, or marry the man your stepfather chooses, ownership reverts to me." I looked at my stepfather, fury boiling over. "So, you killed Mark because he found the will?" The old man smirked. "He was going to take you away right before your birthday. I couldn't let $40 billion vanish." I turned to Kaelen, screaming, "And you? You betrayed me too?" Kaelen stopped, but he didn't turn back. His voice was flat, mechanical. My mission was to protect the legal heir until all criminal evidence was gathered. "Julian, Mr. Vane, you think you've won?" Julian laughed. "I've wiped the will from the servers. Without evidence, this girl is just a homeless vagrant." I looked at Julian, a cold smile appearing through my tears. I didn't move. I stood still, staring at the smartwatch on Julian's wrist, the one I had given him on our 2-year anniversary. "Julian," I whispered, Do you remember this watch? You were always so proud of how it synced with Argus, but you forgot that I'm the one who programmed it. I didn't need a computer. I just needed a command. I looked directly into the dash cam of his car and spoke every word clearly. Argus, activate protocol, swan song, confirmation code, Mark 2405. Julian's face went pale. He looked down at the watch. It was running a string of code he couldn't stop. I continued, my voice like steel. The original will wasn't on your server. It was encrypted inside Argus as a logic bomb. Earlier, when Kaelen cuffed me, he secretly activated the short-range transmitter on my person to link with your system. Every asset of the Vane Group has been returned to its rightful owner, Elara Vane. And right now, the video of the two of you confessing to Mark's murder is streaming live on the Department of Justice homepage. Julian frantically pulled the trigger. I'll kill you! A shot exploded. Kaelen had spun around, shooting Julian through the shoulder before he could fire. Julian collapsed, screaming in despair as his $40 billion empire vanished like smoke. My stepfather tried to run, but real agents, the ones actually in Kaelen's unit, swarmed in and tackled him. I walked over to the old man groveling in the mud, pulled off the wedding ring and threw it in his face. You were right. You're just a stepfather. And from now on, you are nothing. 6 months later, I stood before Mark's grave. Julian was serving life without parole. My stepfather had died in prison of shame. Kaelen appeared at the cemetery gate. He handed me a King of Hearts card, his face no longer sharp or cold. I resigned, he said, his voice raspy. The badge lost its meaning when I realized I had spent 10 years lying to the person I wanted to protect most. I looked at the card, then into his eyes where for the first time I saw unshielded sincerity. I smiled, taking the card. A new hand, Elara? He asked. I didn't answer immediately. I walked toward the sunset, making him follow me. This time, I'm not betting on probability, I called back. I'm betting on faith. Let's go, Kaelen. My life is only just beginning.